Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it?
Glad to be here for this one.
Today we're doing a deep dive auditing St Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands for 2026 and 2027. And I'm just going to say it right out of the gate. This is one of the most misread destinations in the entire Caribbean. If you're planning a trip and want the honest, is it worth it verdict before you book, follow the show on Spotify or Apple.
It really, really is misread.
Yeah.
I mean, people just don't get it.
Right. So imagine stepping off a plane into this warm tropical air and you completely skip the immigration line because, well, it's a U.S. territory.
Which is always a nice feeling.
Oh, totally. And then you head straight to this empty, pristine beach where you don't have to fight a massive cruise ship crowd for like a single grain of sand. Sounds like absolute paradise.
Yeah, on paper it sounds flawless.
But, imagine pulling out your credit card to check out of your hotel and realizing your final bill is nearly a third higher than the price you actually agreed to when you booked.
That is exactly where the paradise narrative just completely shatters.
Exactly. We are looking at a destination where, sure, you pay in standard U.S. dollars, but you face this brutal 12.5% room tax, and then that's layered on top of a roughly 10% energy surcharge. And honestly, that is just the beginning of the friction.
It really is a fascinating case study in travel economics. To truly grasp what a trip here entails,
Right.
you have to look at the broader context of who actually thrives in the specific environment.
Right. Who is this actually for?
Well, you can get cheap, remarkably short flights down there, especially if you're flying out of Miami or Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
But to secure those low upfront costs, the island basically demands concessions from you.
Big concessions.
Huge ones. You'll have to rent a car. That is just non-negotiable.
Right.
And you will have to drive that car on the left side of the road.
Which we are definitely going to talk about.
Oh, yeah. And if you're trying to, game the system by chasing the absolute bottom barrel pricing between June and November, you are walking directly into the teeth of hurricane season.
Which means this deep dive is not for the traveler who just wants to be, handed a margarita and pointed toward a swim-up bar.
No, definitely not.
The people who love this island, the divers, the repeat Caribbean travelers running from tourist traps, the history buffs who just want to wander through Danish colonial towns, they embrace the friction.
They expect it even.
Right. But if you book this expecting a highly polished mega resort experience or vibrant nightlife or, the ability to walk everywhere without a car, you are going to leave deeply, deeply frustrated.
Precisely. And this friction is why, if you pick up most major Caribbean travel guides right now, you'll notice they quietly rank St. Croix below its sister islands, St. Thomas and St. John.
It's totally treated as the underdog.
It is. But paradoxically, that underdog status, that slight barrier to entry, is exactly why we are flagging it as a top-tier destination to book for 2026.
But the catch is you have to understand the shifting money math before you commit.
Exactly. You have to go in with clear eyes.
So let's dissect that money math, because the financial landscape down there feels, well, almost like a trap if you aren't prepared.
It does.
I want to go back to that checkout shock we just mentioned. You have the 12.5% USVI room tax, which, okay, that's standard government taxation. But then hotels are quietly bundling in this energy surcharge of around 10%.
Right, the dreaded energy fee.
Yeah, and I've dug into the territory's utilities, and it all comes down to WAPA, the Water and Power Authority. Can we explain to the listener why this utility is practically dictating hotel prices?
Yeah, so it all comes down to the logistics of island infrastructure. I mean, on the mainland, your electricity grid is massive, it's interconnected, and it's often powered by diverse, relatively cheap energy sources.
Right, you don't have to think about it.
Exactly. But St. Croix is an isolated landmass. WAPA relies heavily on importing very expensive fuel by sea just to run their generators.
Just to keep the lights on.
Just to keep the lights on. So the logistical cost of keeping the power grid up and, running the air conditioning in the Caribbean heat, it's astronomical. Those business rates are brutal.
And the hotels just pass that right along.
They have to. Hotels simply cannot absorb that overhead. So instead of raising their nightly rate and looking totally uncompetitive on travel search engines, they basically carve it out and pass it to you as this unavoidable surcharge at checkout.
I have a real-world example of this that's been circulating on travel forums, and it perfectly illustrates the danger here. Imagine you're scrolling online and you find a beautiful room advertised at $1,567 for your stay.
Sounds pretty good.
Right. You think, great, that fits my budget perfectly, so you book it. But when you check out, the final bill includes about $458 in taxes and fees.
Ouch.
Yeah. That is roughly a 29% stack on top of the initial price. It's infuriating. It's exactly like buying a ticket to a movie, walking into the theater, and having the usher charge you an extra $20 just to turn on the projector.
That is a brilliant analogy because, I mean, you literally cannot utilize the hotel room without the electricity, just as you can't watch the film without the projector.
Exactly.
They're essential to the product, yet they're billed as add-ons. So to give you the baseline numbers for 2026 and 2027, you really have to factor this in.
Let's hear the numbers.
So when you look at one-way flights into the airport, the code is STX. By the way, you're generally seeing a range of $107 to $229.
Okay, that's not bad.
No, the flights are cheap, and if you're hunting for an all-in vacation package, the absolute floor is about $566 during the slower shoulder season. But that rockets to well over $900 during the winter peak.
And what about the hotels themselves?
For a standard mid-range hotel, right in Christiansel Plest, you'll see headline rates of $102 to $150 a night. But again, you must mentally add 29% to that number immediately.
Right, the projector fee.
Exactly. And then you have the rental car, which is going to cost you $50, $90 a day.
So looking at all these rising costs and hidden fees, it really begs the question, why is there such a massive surge in urgency to book St. Croix right now?
Well, there's a threefold urgency converging right now.
Okay, let's break that down.
First, domestic flight security rules have tightened, and Real ID is now strictly enforced. Because St. Croix is a U.S. territory, it is a domestic flight.
No passport required.
None. So for a large subset of travelers who haven't updated their international documents or, whose passports have expired, this island is suddenly their best option for a tropical escape.
That makes total sense. What's the second reason?
Second, the airlines are watching this data and expanding their winter airlift capacity. American Airlines, for instance, is launching a new Saturday service directly out of Chicago O'Hare starting this December.
Oh, wow. Direct from Chicago.
Yeah, that opens up the entire Midwest market without requiring a layover in Miami.
Yeah.
And third, the budget travelers are seeing the hurricane season pricing and basically deciding to roll the dice.
But before anyone rushes to book that new Chicago flight, we need to issue a hard stop. Like a massive skip-if signal.
Yes, please.
If you are someone who flat out refuses to rent a car and drive on vacation, take St. Croix off your list right this second. The island has absolutely no Uber. There is no Lyft.
None. And you cannot rely on the taxi system the way you might in, say, New York or London.
They aren't just waiting around for you.
No. Taxis on St. Croix are not private cars waiting to take you wherever you desire. They are essentially shared vans operating on fixed routes and this very complex government-mandated fare structure.
So if you think you're just going to land, wave down a cab, and hop seamlessly from beach to beach all week without a steering wheel in your hand, yeah, your vacation's going to stall before it even starts.
It's the ultimate reality check.
The transportation reality is the ultimate filter for this destination. If you can accept the driving, you unlock the entire island. But that leads us directly into understanding the timing, because the weather and the crowds dictate the value just as much as the rental car does.
Absolutely. St. Croix heavily rewards meticulous planning regarding the calendar. The absolute premium window, the time when the island is operating at its absolute peak aesthetic, is mid-December through April.
Let me guess, that's when the humidity drops and the storms basically vanish?
Exactly. The trade winds pick up, which acts like natural air conditioning, keeping that intense tropical humidity at bay.
Thank goodness for trade winds.
Right. The rain is historically light, and most importantly for this specific island, the sea state is remarkably calm.
Which is huge for the diver.
It's vital. That calm water is essential because diving and snorkeling are the primary draws here. But, you pay dearly for that perfection.
Right, the prices spike.
Yeah, remember those Christiansel mid-range rooms we mentioned? If you look in September, they might sit near $110. Look again for a week in February, and that same exact room jumps to $180 to $240 a night.
Wow.
And those vacation packages climb from the $566 floor right past the $900 mark.
So the inverse of that, the worst possible window has to be late summer, like August through October.
Yes, because that is the absolute peak of the Atlantic hurricane season, which officially spans from June 1st to November 30th.
Right.
During those late summer and early fall months, the trade winds just die down. You're dealing with oppressive heat, intense humidity, and a very real statistical risk of a major storm developing.
The prices are at their absolute lowest, but your risk of spending your vacation boarded up in a hotel room with no power is at its highest.
Exactly.
So where is the middle ground? Where is the sweet spot for the traveler who wants decent weather but just refuses to pay the February premium?
You target the shoulder seasons. That means looking at late April into June, and then there's a brief window in November.
Okay, so pre and post summer.
Right. During these weeks, you get post-peak pricing, the weather is generally favorable, and the crowds are noticeably thinner. You are edging toward storm season on the back end in November, but it's a calculated gamble that often provides incredible value.
Let's actually talk about those crowds because the density dynamics on St. Croix are incredibly unusual for a Caribbean destination.
They really are.
Usually when you think of the Caribbean in winter, you think of massive cruise ships blotting out the sun and thousands of people just swarming the beaches. But here, the cruise pressure is hyper-isolated.
It is entirely localized to the west end of the island, specifically in the town of Frederiksted at the Annie Abramson Pier.
Right, and the dynamic there is wild. When a ship docks, places like Fort Frederick and Rainbow Beach suddenly fill up with thousands of people. It gets completely chaotic for exactly a few hours.
They get just a few hours.
And then by late afternoon, the ship blows its horn, everyone funnels back onto the gangway, the ship sails away, and the town completely empties out. It goes from a bustling tourist hub back to a quiet, sleepy village in the blink of an eye.
Which is such a stark contrast to St. Thomas. I mean, if you compare Frederiksted to Charlotte Amalie on St. Thomas, Charlotte Amalie is a permanent machine built to handle multiple ships a day.
It's always packed.
Always. St. Croix simply never gets swamped like that globally. Christiansted, which is the main town on the north-central coast, stays walkable and wonderfully calm even during the absolute peak of high season.
So you can actually enjoy the town.
Yeah, you can stroll down the boardwalk, wander along King Street, Company Street, or Strand Street, and it rarely feels overwhelming.
But I imagine the local event calendar throws a wrench into that tranquility, right? There have to be demand spikes.
Oh, yes. There are 3 major cultural events you must map out. The biggest is the Crucian Christmas Festival.
Which isn't just one day, right?
No, it's a massive cultural celebration that runs from late December all the way through to Three Kings Day on January 6th.
Wow.
It brings in incredible parades, music, and food, but it will completely book out the Christiansted hotels months in advance.
Okay, what are the other 2?
Then in February, usually right around President's Weekend, you have AgriFest. That's a massive agriculture and food fair that draws people from all over the territory. Finally, in the summer, there is Mango Melee held at the St. George Village Botanical Garden.
Okay, let me challenge this strategy for a second. If I am the traveler you described earlier, the one running away from tourist traps who just wants an empty beach and silence, I should be actively taking a red pen to my calendar and crossing out these festival dates, right?
Well, if isolation is your singular goal, absolutely avoid them.
Right.
But I would argue that if you want to actually understand Crucian culture and taste the best local food of the year, you should deliberately target them. The caveat is that you simply must book your logistics 3 to 4 months out to make it work without intense stress.
That makes total sense. It's about knowing what you're signing up for, and part of that is knowing where on the island to actually sign up, because the geography dictates the experience.
It really does.
There are 4 distinct named zones, and they perfectly align with different traveler profiles.
Let's map them out. You have the North Shore, which includes areas like Cane Bay and Carambeloa. This is the rugged, dive-driven zone.
This is where you want to be in the winter.
Exactly. You want to utilize this area during that calm winter to spring window, because that is when the famous Cane Bay Wall is diveable right from the shore.
Amazing.
Then you have the East End, heading out toward Point Udall, and the Divicarina Bay area. The microclimate here is distinctly drier, windier, and more desert-like year-round.
Then we have the West End, which is Frederiksted. We know that's the cruise hub. But when the ships are gone, it's where you go for incredibly calm evening swims and literally the best sunsets on the island.
Beautiful sunsets.
And finally, the North Central Zone, Christiansted, which is your primary hub for dense accommodation and dining.
So if we synthesize all of this, divers need to target December to May on the North Shore for the best underwater visibility. Families generally do best in the winter when the seas are calmest for children.
Right.
Budget travelers can genuinely score in November if they're willing to take a small gamble on late-season storms. And the true risk-takers, they chase the rock-bottom prices in September.
But the core actionable advice remains, right? If you are reserving for the winter holidays or those festivals, secure your room and your rental car 3 to 4 months out.
Yes. The car inventory on the island is small, and they absolutely do sell out.
And never, ever book a September trip without robust travel insurance.
Never.
Okay, so you've mapped your zone, you've chosen your season, and you've booked your flight. When that plane touches down at Henry E. Rolson Airport STX, the real test begins.
Sure does.
The airport itself is on the south side of the island. It's a small, single-terminal facility. If you are a U.S. citizen arriving from Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Atlanta, Charlotte, Chicago, or San Juan, immigration is basically a non-event.
You just grab your bags and go?
You flash your real ID and walk through. Non-U.S. citizens will clear a U.S. port of entry, but it's efficient. The friction doesn't happen inside the building. The friction hits you the second the automatic doors open to the curb.
Because there is no infrastructure waiting to bail you out. There is no train. There is no tourist bus on a neat schedule. There is no rideshare app you can casually open.
None of it.
Your transport reality check is stark. You're either climbing into a shared government taxi van or you are picking up your pre-booked rental car.
Let's do the math on those taxis so people understand exactly why we are pushing the rental car so hard. The government sets these fares based on a per-trip base rate, and then they stack a per-head add-on.
It gets expensive fast.
Very fast. If you're going from the airport to Christiansted, it is a $24 base fare, but then they charge $14 for every extra passenger in your group.
Wow.
And if you are heading out to Frederiksted, it's an $18 base plus $9 for every extra passenger.
So if you are a family of 4, you are paying a massive stack of cash just to get from the tarmac to your hotel lobby. And you aren't doing it in a private town car. You are doing it in a shared van, making multiple stops along the way as they drop off other tourists.
Which inevitably pushes almost everyone to the rental car counter. But the second you get your keys, you face the driving shock.
Oh, the driving shock.
Let's really unpack this because your brain and your spatial awareness are about to start fighting each other. Because of the Danish and British colonial legacy, St Croix drives on the left side of the road. However, they import standard left-hand drive American vehicles.
It is incredibly disorienting.
I can't even imagine.
I mean, when you drive on the left in the UK, you sit on the right side of the car, which aligns your body with the center line of the road. On St Croix, you are sitting on the left side of the car, driving on the left side of the road.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Your instinct, developed over years of mainland driving, is to align your body with the center line. If you do that here, your passenger side tires are suddenly halfway into a ditch or scraping against a retaining wall.
I can literally feel my heart rate spiking just visualizing it. It takes serious mental energy for that first hour. But, I don't want to paint it as a complete nightmare. The drive itself, once you get the hang of it, is actually quite beautiful. Heading toward Christiansted, the landscape is green and rolling. It is unhurried. You aren't dealing with the aggressive touting or the massive multi-lane gridlock you find on busier islands.
It's very peaceful.
But that arrival is only smooth and scenic if you pre-booked the car. If you didn't, you are navigating that taxi van system, and you arrive at your hotel knowing you are effectively stranded there for the rest of your trip.
And that feeling of being stranded is exactly why choosing your accommodation is the most critical decision you will make. Where you sleep dictates your daily logistics.
So true.
We have broken this down into 4 specific traveler avatars to show you how this plays out. Let's start with the backpacker and budget traveler.
If you are watching every dollar, your strategy has to be basing yourself right inside Christian Suit Town.
Yep.
You are looking at historic spots like the Company House Hotel on Company Street or the Club Comanche down by the boardwalk. You can usually secure a room there for roughly $95 to $130 a night, pre-tax.
The massive logistical benefit here is that it gives you walkable, car-free evenings.
Which is rare on this island.
Very rare. You can step out of the lobby, walk down the cobblestone streets to a restaurant, and walk back.
Yeah.
You aren't paying taxi fares to go to dinner.
But the trade-off is significant. In town, you are going to hear the noise of the island, especially during those festival weekends. And crucially, there is no immediate roll-out-of-bed beach in Christiansted.
Right, it's a harbor.
Exactly. The water is right there, but it's a working harbor. If you want to swim, you have to walk down to the boardwalk and take a little 2-minute ferry boat over to Protestant Cay. It is charming, but it requires effort.
Moving up a tier, we have the Midrange couple. Honestly, this represents the strongest value proposition on the entire island.
I totally agree.
You are looking at waterfront options. Think about the Hotel Caravel, right on the Christiansted Boardwalk, or the Hotel on the Cay, which is actually situated on Protestant Cay in the middle of the harbor.
And what do those run?
These range from $140 to $210 pre-tax. You get the harbor views, incredibly easy dining access, and a very relaxed nautical vibe.
But the catch for the mid-range couple is that while you are well positioned for evenings, you're not self-contained. If you want to see the rainforest on the West End or visit the truly spectacular, expansive beaches, you absolutely still need that rental car.
Next is a family avatar. For families, the equation changes. You really need to look at the east end of the island.
Okay, why the East End?
We're talking about places like the Divi Carina Bay Beach Resort, which is notable as the island's only casino resort, or you look into renting a vacation home in the Cheney Bay area. Pricing here typically runs $200 to $320 pre-tax.
Which gets you more space.
Exactly. What you are buying for that money is a real accessible beach right out your door and the physical space for kids to burn off energy.
The drawback here is isolation. The East End is a solid 20 to 30-minute drive from all the dining, history, and action in Christian Sected.
It's a hike.
It is. That means your family is entirely car dependent. And let me tell you, after a long day in the sun, piling a family of 4 into a car to drive 30 minutes in the dark on unfamiliar roads to get dinner, it gets tedious fast.
It really does.
The result, families end up giving up and eating expensive on-site meals at the resort, which quietly blows up the vacation budget.
Finally, we reach the luxury and comfort avatar. These are the heavy hitters of St. Croix.
The big names.
Yeah, you have the Buccaneer, which is this massive, iconic, historic estate resort featuring its own golf course and tennis courts.
Yeah.
That will run $400 to $650 plus pre-tax.
Beautiful property.
Stunning. Over on the North Shore, you have the Carambola Beach Resort, which provides a secluded, dive-adjacent luxury feel for $300 to $500. And if you prefer the West End vibe, the Fred in Frederiksted is a highly stylish, adults-focused boutique hotel.
Let me stop you right there because we need to apply that math we talked about earlier.
The checkout shock.
Yep. If you book a $500 headline night at one of these luxury spots, you are not paying $500. Once they apply that 12.5% tax and the 10% energy fee, that $500 room is actually billing you closer to $625, $645 all in per night.
It's a massive jump.
It is. The more expensive the base rate of the room, the more aggressively that percentage-based tax stack hurts your wallet.
Which perfectly transitions us to the next major expense: food, groceries, and etiquette. As we noted, St. Croix runs entirely on the US dollar. There is no currency conversion math to do in your head.
Which is a relief.
It is, but do not let the familiar greenbacks fool you into thinking the prices will match your local supermarket.
Not even close. Let's talk about grocery economics because island supply chains are brutal. Almost everything on the shelves has to be imported by ship, maintaining a cold chain across the ocean.
Which costs money.
A lot of money. If you rent a condo and plan to cook, you will likely head to Plaza Extra, which has locations on both the east and west sides, or Pueblo, right in Christiansted, or Cost You Less, which is a warehouse-style bulk store near the airport.
Imagine you've just unlocked your Airbnb. You want to make a simple breakfast the next morning and maybe have a beer on the porch. You run to the store.
Get ready for this.
Listen to these exact prices. A single gallon of milk is going to run you $6 to $8.
Wow.
A dozen standard eggs, $4 to $6. A basic loaf of bread is $4 to $5. A six-pack of Cruzan or imported beer will be $12 to $16.
It adds up so fast.
A case of bottled water is $6 to $9. Bananas and local produce hover around $2 to $4 a pound, and a standard block of cheese will set you back $7 to $10.
If you put all of that in a basket, you are easily spending $30 to $40 just for the absolute bare minimum essentials. It adds up remarkably fast.
It really does.
However, there is one glorious exception to this rule. If you happen to visit during the summer, you can buy a massive, heavy bag of locally grown mangoes for just $3 to $5.
That is amazing.
It is a genuine bargain and one of the rare moments where local agricultural abundance beats the import costs.
So if groceries induce sticker shock, what happens when you eat out? You have to understand the stark contrast between the boardwalk tourist spots and the local crucian joints.
Night and day difference.
If you sit down to places like Rum Runners or Brew STX right on the Christiansted Boardwalk, a basic burger and a drink is going to cost you between $22 and $30. You are paying for the water view and the convenience.
But here is where it gets incredibly rewarding for the savvy traveler. If you take your rental car and go where the locals go, the value is phenomenal.
Give us an example.
One of my absolute favorite finds on the island is a Lorraine chicken shack. It is legendary. You can get a massive, deeply satisfying plate of rotisserie chicken with traditional Johnny cakes for just $10 to $15.
That sounds incredible.
Or if you are over on the West End in Frederiksted, hit up Polly's at the pier. You can get excellent breakfast and sandwiches in the $12 to $16 range.
To give you a realistic mental baseline for your daily dining costs, a local coffee will run $4 to $6. A simple lunch out will be $12 to $18. And if you sit down for dinner for two, including drinks, you should expect the bill to land anywhere between $70 and $110.
And what about drinks?
Speaking of drinks, Cruzan rum is distilled right there on the island. Because there are no import costs, it is by far the cheapest quality spirit available. In fact, taking the distillery tour itself is very inexpensive and highly recommended.
Let's quickly cover etiquette and hydration. Standard U.S. tipping culture fully applies, meaning you are expected to tip 18% to 20% for service. But, and this is a big but, service operates firmly on island time. You need to calibrate your expectations. Bringing an impatient, rushed mainland attitude to a restaurant will not get your food out of the kitchen any faster. It will just create friction.
So true. Regarding hydration, the tap water on the island is generally cistern-collected rainwater.
Which means?
While locals drink it, most visitors choose to rely on bottled or filtered water just to avoid any stomach adjustment issues. And a vital note on dietary restrictions: if you are vegan, vegetarian, or gluten-free, your options are relatively decent within Christian Studenten.
But outside of town.
The moment you venture out to the Far East or West Ends, those specialized options become exceedingly thin.
All right, we've thrown a lot of numbers at you. Let's pull them all together into a daily budget breakdown. We need to put real, actionable USD line items on this because we have clearly established that St. Croix is decidedly not a low-cost, budget Caribbean island, despite the lack of mega resorts.
And we must emphasize these are per-day numbers in US dollars, and they absolutely exclude the cost of your international flights.
Let's start with our backpacker. We estimate $110 to $150 a day. How does that math work?
It works by splitting a $95 to $130 room, meaning your share is around $50 to $65. You spend $20 to $30 on food by heavily combining self-catering from Plaza Extra with one cheap, hearty meal at Lorraine.
Okay, what about getting around?
Transport, either by braving the shared vans or splitting an economy rental car, eats up $15 to $25. Your entertainment is basically free walking towns and hitting public beaches costing $0 to $10. Throw in a $10 buffer.
It's tight.
The critical takeaway here: the rental car is the single biggest overrun risk for solo backpackers. If you are traveling alone and cannot split the car cost, your budget immediately explodes past this tier.
Moving to the mid-range traveler, we model this at $220 to $320 per person per day. That assumes you are splitting that $160 to $210 waterfront room.
Right.
You are spending $50 to $70 on food, mixing a few groceries with nice boardwalk dinners. You split the rental car, making your share $30 to $45. You allocate $40 to $60 for amortized attractions like taking a Buck Island tour one day, plus a $20 buffer.
Which feels pretty reasonable.
Yeah, realistically, for a trip where you feel comfortable and aren't agonizing over every single purchase, expect to spend about $280 per person per day, all in.
Then we hit the family of four. This is where the sheer volume of costs becomes serious: $500 to $750 a day. Over a week-long trip, that translates to $4,500 to $7,500.
Ouch.
Your room is $250 to $350. Food is $120 to $180, and listen closely, that assumes you are cooking.
Oh man, cooking on vacation.
If a family of four sits down at the standard restaurant, the bill easily hits $90 to $140 per meal. Your rental car, likely a larger SUV or minivan, is $70 to $95 a day. Beach access and small attractions add $60 to $120, plus a $40 buffer.
So it's the food that gets them.
Families consistently underestimate the massive premium they end up paying for eating at resort restaurants simply out of exhaustion.
And what about the luxury tier?
You are budgeting $700 to $1,200 plus per day. That $400 to $650 becomes $500 to $850 after the tax stack. Fine dining will easily run $150 to $250 a day. A premium car or a hired driver is $90 to $150. Private charters and diving add $150 to $300.
I have to interject here because I look at those luxury dining prices and I think about the island's culinary scene. Is it actually worth paying massive resort markups for dinner on this specific island?
The short answer is no. Do not pay exorbitant resort food markups here. The quality rarely justifies the premium.
Right. Go to town.
Yes, instead, drive your rental car into Christian Elted for much better, more authentic, and more vibrant food. If you are going to deploy luxury money on St. Croix, direct it toward experiences. Spend it on a private, Buck Island catamaran charter. That is where you extract genuine, unforgettable value.
We also need to quickly address the digital nomad budget because this island looks tempting for remote work. We estimate roughly $3,500 to $5,500 monthly.
That sounds about right.
You will pay $1,800 to $2,800 for a condo rental, $700 to $1,000 for groceries and food, and $900 to $1,400 for a long-term car rental. The internet in Christian Tills is surprisingly robust. But the fatal trap for nomads is the WAPA electricity bill.
Yes, if your long-term rental agreement unbundles the utilities, meaning you pay the electric bill separately, running the air conditioning like you do back home will absolutely bankrupt you.
Bankrupt you.
Make sure utilities are included, book off-season condos directly with owners, and never try to string together nightly hotel rates for a month-long stay.
We've mentioned a few traps organically, but I want to codify them. There are 3 named logistics traps that consistently ruin vacations on St. Croix. Trap 1 is the stacked tax and energy surcharge trap.
We detailed the mechanism earlier, but let's review the psychology of it.
Mhm.
A hotel advertises a competitive base rate to get you to click.
Yeah.
Then comes the mandatory 12.5% USVI room tax. Then the roughly 10% of WAPA energy surcharge.
Mm.
And occasionally a vague resort fee on top.
It's just layer after layer.
The lived reality is a checkout bill up to 29% higher than the number that convinced you to book. It is a mathematical ambush, and it bites the luxury and mid-range travelers the hardest, because 29% of a $500 room is a very painful number.
The practical fix to avoid this ambush: always call or email the property directly and demand the all-in nightly total before you authorize your credit card.
Good advice.
Build a spreadsheet and manually add 25% to 29% to every headline price you see. The rule here: skip the supposedly cheap week if it only fits your budget at the advertised headline rate, because when checkout day comes, you won't be able to afford it.
Trap 2 is the drive on the left rental trap.
We talked about the brain versus the seat, but let's put you in a specific scenario. You are driving on the left side of the road, sitting on the left side of the car. The roads in the interior are narrow.
Very narrow.
Suddenly, as you are driving through the rainforest out near Cane Bay, there is a massive pothole in front of you. Or worse, roaming livestock, feral chickens, dogs, or even horses wanders directly into your lane. You swerve, but your spatial awareness is off. You clip a mirror or scrape a bumper.
The financial cost of getting that split-second decision wrong is steep. A minor fender bender, combined with the local rental company's insurance excess, will easily cost you between $500 and $1,500 out of pocket.
Right.
And here is a critical insurance detail. Many mainland credit cards that offer primary rental car insurance have hidden geographic gaps in their policies regarding the U.S. Virgin Islands. You might think you are covered, but you aren't.
So what is the practical fix? Just buy the collision damage waiver at the counter.
Just do it.
It is usually $15 to $30 a day. Just pay it. It buys you peace of mind. Also, ensure your very first drive from the airport to your hotel happens during daylight hours, and entirely avoid rural night driving until you are fully acclimated.
Absolutely.
And the rule here is blunt, skip St. Croix entirely if you aren't comfortable adapting to unfamiliar, slightly chaotic driving conditions.
Trap 3 is the no rideshare shared taxi illusion. The mechanism of this trap is pure modern habit. Travelers land, assume they can just pull up an app, order an Uber to the beach, and avoid the rental car expense entirely.
But we know that's not true.
But, as we established, the taxis are government rate vans that wait until they are full of strangers before departing, running rigid, set routes.
The penalty for this illusion is severe. You end up literally stranded at your hotel lobby, waiting hours for a van to fill up, and paying those exorbitant per-person add-ons we discussed.
It's incredibly frustrating.
Couples trying to wing it without a car can easily blow $300 to $500 in a week just on frustrating taxi rides, and they still won't get to see half the island's beauty.
The practical fix is a shift in mindset. You must budget the rental car as a fixed, unavoidable cost of visiting St. Croix, exactly like the flight.
Right.
The rule: skip the no-car plan entirely unless your specific, unwavering goal is to check into a hotel in Christian Sensted and literally never leave the walkable town center for your entire trip.
Now, whenever someone starts researching a trip to the USVI, they inevitably type safety into the search bar, and the crime statistics pop up and terrify them. Let's talk safety, solo travel, and comfort.
We have to contextualize those statistics against the reality of the geography. The USVI does indeed have higher per capita violent crime stats than the U.S. mainland. That is a statistical fact. However, that violence is overwhelmingly local on local. And it almost exclusively occurs in specific residential neighborhoods that are geographically far removed from the tourist corridors.
So tourists aren't the targets.
No, the places you are going to spend your time, the beaches, the dive sites, the
Right.
Christian-silted boardwalk, are calm, relaxed, and safe.
Exactly. We need to reorder the real risk hierarchy for a tourist. Number one is petty theft. Do not leave your beach bag unattended on the sand while you snorkel for an hour, and never leave valuables visible on the seat of your rental car.
Common sense stuff.
Right. Number two is road safety, navigating that left-hand driving on unlit, potholed roads at night. And only down at number three is personal crime, which is exceptionally low in the areas tourists actually visit.
If we look at traveler comfort specifically, for solo female travelers, Christian-suited is very comfortable in daylight and perfectly reasonable in the early evening when people are out dining.
Just stick to the lit areas.
It simply requires standard urban common sense. Avoid walking alone in dark, unfamiliar areas late at night. For family comfort, the rating is extremely high, especially in the resorts and on the beaches. As we noted, the winter waters are incredibly calm, making them very safe for young swimmers.
One thing older travelers or serious divers need to consider is health and medical access. What happens if something goes wrong?
That is a critical point of due diligence. St. Croix is served by the Governor Juan F. Lewis Hospital. It handles basic emergencies perfectly well.
But for major issues,
However, for truly serious, complex, or life-threatening medical emergencies, patients often have to be medevaced by flight to San Juan, Puerto Rico, or even back to the U.S. mainland.
wow, okay.
Therefore, comprehensive travel insurance that explicitly includes medical evacuation coverage is strongly advised, particularly if you are an older traveler or if you are engaging in advanced deep-water diving.
So the overall comfort verdict. Scams are virtually non-existent here. You aren't constantly dodging aggressive hustlers.
Not at all.
The nightlife is mellow, which, depending on your personality, is either a huge pro or a huge con. Ultimately, the discomforts of St. Croix are manageable. It's about ordinary, car-dependent island risks. You aren't facing structural, systemic danger as a tourist.
Which brings us to the culmination of the trip's best moments and honest disappointments. Let's start with what genuinely works, the experiences that make all the friction entirely worth it.
I'll start because this is the single best thing on the island, Buck Island Reef National Monument.
Oh, absolutely.
You drive into Christiansted, board a half-day catamaran trip, and sail out to this uninhabited island. It costs about $90 to $140 per person, and it provides a world-class snorkel and dive experience.
The underwater trail there is famous.
There is an actual underwater trail. The water clarity, the turtle sightings, and the reef health are simply stunning.
For the serious divers, the undisputed highlight is the Cane Bay Wall on the North Shore. It is widely considered a world-class shore dive.
You just walk right in.
You literally walk off the beach, swim out a short distance, and the seafloor suddenly drops away into a massive deep blue abyss. Local dive operators typically charge $80 to $120 for a two-tank dive, and it's phenomenal.
You also have to carve out time for Point Udall. It is
Wow.
the easternmost point of the United States. It is totally free to visit, and getting up early to catch the sunrise there, watching the light hit the sundial monument, is incredible.
It's beautiful.
And then there is Sandy Point National Wildlife Refuge down near Frederickstead. Fun piece of trivia. This is the stunning, expansive, untouched beach from the closing scene of the movie The Shawshank Redemption.
Wait, really?
Yes, it is 2 miles of pristine, undeveloped perfection. But you must check the local schedule ahead of time because the government closes it down entirely for months at a time during turtle nesting season.
Good to know.
Also take an afternoon to do the Cruise on Rum tour, visit the Historic Estate Whim Museum, and walk through the St. George Village Botanical Garden. Entry for those sites is only $10 to $15, and they offer great cultural context.
But we promised an honest audit, which means looking at the disappointments. The beaches here are lovely, but they are not always those heavily photoshopped, powder white, perfectly calm lagoons you see on postcards from other Caribbean mega destinations.
Right.
Many of them are quite narrow, some are plagued by seasonal seagrass wash-ups, and the surf on the North Shore can be genuinely rough and churned up outside of that calm winter season.
I'll add another disappointment to the list, Frederickstead. When a cruise ship is in port, it is vibrant and chaotic. But on a non-cruise day, it can feel completely dead, abandoned even.
Yeah, everything just shuts down.
A lot of businesses simply don't open. Also, the Instagram photos you see online brilliantly hide the reality of the potholed roads, the intense car dependency required to get to those perfect views, and those massive checkout fees we keep talking about.
The primary takeaway to guarantee a good trip: do not overpay for resort restaurant prices or settle for those convenient but soulless hotels near the airport just to save a few bucks.
Right, venture out.
Visit Sandy Point early in the day before the sun gets too intense, and absolutely book your Buck Island excursion specifically in that winter to spring window to guarantee the best water clarity.
Now, maybe you've listened to all of this, the driving on the left, the expensive groceries, the lack of nightlife, and you were thinking St. Croix just isn't for you. That is perfectly fine. Let's look at two alternatives. Alternative one is its sister island, St. Thomas, USVI.
The baseline comparison is straightforward. St. Thomas is in the exact same territory, so it uses the same US dollar and requires no passport for Americans.
Which keeps things easy.
You can even reach it from St. Croix via a quick 40-minute Cape Air hop or a highly scenic seaborne seaplane ride. On the cost front, lodging in St. Thomas will generally run you $30 to $60 more per night at a comparable mid-range hotel, particularly around the bustling Charlotte-Amalie area or the East End.
The core distinction here is entirely about the vibe. St. Thomas is far better if you want diverse, high-end dining, active and loud nightlife, a massive amount of direct airlift choices from the mainland, and easy onward ferry access to St. John.
But St. Croix wins on other fronts.
Yeah, St. Croix easily wins if your priority is avoiding massive cruise crowds, accessing superior, easily reachable shore diving, and experiencing a much calmer, distinctly local feel.
Alternative 2 takes us out of the U.S. Virgin Islands entirely and over to Vieques, Puerto Rico.
Oh, I love Vieques.
It is another quiet U.S. territory, so again, no passport required. Vieques is famous for its glowing, bioluminescent bay, its wild horses that roam freely across the island, and incredibly empty, rugged beaches.
How do you get there?
To get there, you fly into San Juan Airport Code at SJU and then take a ferry or a small puddle jumper plane. Lodging in Vieques is a significant bargain compared to St. Croix. It's typically $40 to $80 less per night at the mid-range level.
But here's the critical distinction. Vieques is much better for strict budget travelers, those seeking raw, deeply undeveloped quiet, and anyone who specifically wants to see the bioluminescence. St. Croix, however, is significantly better for established professional dive infrastructure, the absolute convenience of direct mainland flights without needing a ferry, and exploring deeply preserved, authentic Danish colonial history.
Which brings us to our grand finale, the Is It Worth It matrix. We're going to rapid fire the final scores and the key takeaways for each of our travel avatars based on everything we've unpacked today. I'll give the score, you give the reasoning.
Sounds good, let's do it.
First up, the backpacker. Score, 6 out of 10.
It is worth it only if you are actively splitting a rental car and a room in Christian Seated with a friend, bringing your daily costs down to that $110 to $150 range. Skip it entirely if you refuse to rent a car. It is simply pricier and harder to do St. Croix on a shoestring than it is to do Vieques.
Next, the mid-range couple. Score, 8 out of 10. This is the strongest tier by far.
Highly worth it, provided you do the work and book your waterfront room in your car 3 to 4 months ahead of time, and you make sure to take that Buck Island trip. Expect to spend $280 per person per day, all in. It absolutely beats St. Thomas on overall feel and relaxation.
The family avatar. Score, 7 out of 10.
Worth it for those spacious East End resorts like Divi Carina Bay, especially if you commit to cooking your own meals and utilizing those calm winter seas for the kids. Budget $500 to $750 a day, but skip it if you are underestimating those food premiums, because a week can easily hit $4,500 to $7,500 if you rely on resort restaurants for every meal.
The luxury traveler. Score, 7 out of 10.
Worth it if you are going for the expansive space and deep history of properties like the Buccaneer or Carambola, but you must remember a $625 to $645 per night all-in cost is your actual reality once the tax stack hits. Skip St. Croix if you are expecting high-end Miami-style glitz, velvet ropes, and VIP nightlife. You won't find it here.
Finally, the digital nomad or solo traveler. Score, 6 out of 10.
Worth it if you can secure a monthly off-season condo in Christiansted for $3,500 to $5,500 a month with utilities included. Skip it if you're going to get trapped by unbundled WAPA electricity bills, or if your daily productivity requires a vibrant, bustling, highly networked co-working scene.
So, synthesizing all of this into an overall verdict book carefully. St. Croix is a top-value, remarkably low-crowd Caribbean spot. If you travel between December and April, book early, rent a car, and realistically budget for that 29% checkout stack.
Yep, the math has to work.
Skip it if you want car-free nightlife, or if you only have flexibility to travel during the peak hurricane season. To tie this all together and leave you with something to think about, consider this perhaps that exact friction we've spent the last hour dissecting: the complete lack of Ubers, the terrifying first hour of left-hand driving, the brutal WAPA surcharges. Perhaps that friction is the only thing acting as a moat, keeping St. Croix from becoming just another overpolished, overcrowded Caribbean trap.
If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day. That is The Honest Verdict from Phil and H.